the end of the talk. So thank you for sticking around. I will share my screen optimized for video, so my face will disappear, hopefully to great benefit. So yes, so I'm going to talk about MCPM, which stands for Monte Carlo, and I have swapped the letters then. So it should be MCPM for Monte Carlo Physarum Machine. My name is Oskar Elek. I am a postdoc at the Creative Coding Lab of Angus Forbes at University of California in Santa Cruz. And this is a work with astronomers Joe Burchett and Xavier Prochaska, or just Professor X for short, who are both at the university's astronomy department. So they are all these people are responsible for the astronomical expertise of this work. So before I start about the project, let me just quote one of the great minds of the last century, Benoit Mandelbrot, just to give a nod to his work and to fractals. Bottomless wonders spring from simple rules which are repeated without end. And I think most of us know where all this went and what kind of understanding about our world and nature and systems has this brought. So by now, fractals, they have been mapped, they have been understood through and through, and they have also contributed to some of our worst dreams. But what about the practical use of these structures and the mathematics? So I'm hoping that this work also contributes to that, to making fractals practical. So here is the full title of the work, Monte Carlo Physarum Machine, which is an agent-based system or model to reconstruct complex 3D transport networks. So what is our context? It is nothing less than the cosmic web. So you might be aware what cosmic web is. It's been detected in simulations around the turn of the millennium, and even before that, it has been kind of eluded or indicated by theory that this structure exists and roughly what it looks like. And it looks like a gigantic fractal spiderweb thingy, and it's also is huge. I mean, here is just zooming into this structure, which is simulated on a supercomputer. And you can see that only when we get down to the level of the individual strands or filaments, as they are called, do we actually see individual galaxies. So the galaxies are just these bright splotches kind of interseeded in this entire network. So these are simulations. So we kind of know that this exists. I really love this visualization from Pablo Pudashi, where this is a logarithmic scale visualization of the universe, where solar system is at the center, and then we have planets, we have the scale of galaxies around here, and then only once the galaxies get to be individual dots, so to say, does the structure of the cosmic web emerge. So this is a really huge structure with features, these filaments, between few megaparsecs and hundreds of megaparsecs, which 1 megaparsec is 3 million light years. So this is an incredibly, unimaginably large structure, and we're trying to actually find or reconstruct this structure. Why are we doing this? Well, this is a picture from Google Deep Field. This is a very high level zoom of the universe, and we can see individual galaxies just being happy, sloshing in space, and we don't see any spider webs. We don't see any cosmic web. So why is this? We know it exists, but where is it? So it turns out that the cosmic web is incredibly diffuse. It is a very sparse medium, mostly composed of gas. It also has an underlying scaffolding of dark matter, but we cannot definitely see that. And yeah, here you see that from the point of view of individual galaxies, which are just dots, the intergalactic medium or the cosmic web is just kind of these weak, fuzzy structures penetrating in and out. And yeah, so this makes this structure very, very hard to detect. It basically doesn't emit light, it reflects or scatters very little light. So it is a tough case. We have this indirect evidence or observations. For instance, this the cosmic background radiation in the microwave wavelengths, and we see kind of like an indirect footprint of this cosmic web structure, but nothing that can directly be used for reconstruction. So when you look at the data, so this is a selection of 37,000 galaxies. Again, each is an individual point from the Sloan Digital Sky Survey, which is like a wide sky survey of what's out there in space. It's zoomed on the Coma cluster, which is here, this dense structure in the center. And you can see that there is kind of hint of structure visible in this data, but it's not very clear where is it and how to resolve it in space. And so our intention has been to reconstruct or find this structure reliably, robustly. And for that we use the slime mold, which is an organism that many of you probably know. It is a unicellular but macroscopic multinuclear protist that grows on trees and forest debris. And it searches for food by climbing chemical gradients of attractants that are emitted by food and the organism itself. And that actually leads it emergently to form near optimal transport networks, which has been shown in many works. For instance, here is a famous one when people have reconstructed the Tokyo rail map and train map, I mean underground and railway map with high fidelity compared to the actual real structure that has been engineered. And so you probably know Andrew Adamatsky. He has written a Bible how to grow the slime mold and use it for as an analog wet lab computer for many tasks. And the reason why this organism could be useful for us is because of what we know about the cosmic web. So from one of the papers that kind of surveys many of these cosmic web finders, there's a quote: filaments appear to be the highways of the universe, the transport channels along which mass and galaxies get channeled into the higher density cluster regions, and which define the connecting structures between the higher density complexes. So it's basically the cosmic web is like the matter, like the gas highway of the universe. And so it seems fitting that we would do something that builds optimal transport networks or approximates them to actually find this structure. But of course, you know, using the analog Physarum is very impractical if you have 37,000 galaxies distributed in 3D space. So what we use instead is a simulation. So we build on the 2010 model of Jeff Jones that has been actually published within the Alife journal. And the model is a combination of discrete and continuous quantities, which kind of mimics the natural processes. So here we have a schematic view of this. The left part is a data map, which is the agents themselves, which represent the nuclei of this organism. And then there is a continuous, he calls it trail map, which stores the continuous chemical kind of the density of the attractant, which then guides these agents to specific places in space, most prominently to the data sources, of course. So Jones showed that this model actually reproduces all kinds of very interesting morphologies. Some of them correspond to the real slime mold. Some of them are more akin to reaction diffusion systems, but there is great richness of structure. The limitation is that this is a two-dimensional model, so we cannot use it for our task. The way how we actually found this model was through the artistic experiments of a Berlin-based artist named Sage Jensen, who implemented this on GPU and actually showed these amazing animations and experiments with this virtual simulated organism. And so he uses pretty much the same algorithm. So we have this data, which are again the agents, except that now we have millions of them thanks to the parallel implementation. And then there is a trail, which is the kind of continuous chemical representation of both the agents and the data. And by data, I mean the source data that we are trying to fit to. And so each agent is a particle that moves around in some number of directions, or it can choose from a number of directions. And then it has simple rules which make it follow the gradient of the chemical attractant. And yeah, this is the resulting behavior of this. So our first step was to actually extend this to 3 dimensions. So here we have the agents represented as kind of white dots, and this is already fitting to the galaxies. So you can see that the agents kind of accumulate around the supposed data sources, which are not rendered here, just to show the agents themselves. And you can see that this is a fully 3-dimensional structure, and the agents actually stabilized in an equilibrium, which corresponds to the structure of the galaxies. So one key extension that we have done to Jones's model is in terms of how the agents sample their environment. So here on the right, you see a fit to some particular data using the Jones's rule set for the agent navigation. And you can see that the structure is really cool, but it is kind of very sharpened, and it actually doesn't match the distribution of galaxies or even the dark matter halos, which has been the data set in this case. So it doesn't represent the distribution very well. Whereas if you actually represent the movement of the agents stochastically, so that their movement velocities and directions are sampled from some well-chosen probability distributions, then you actually get a much richer behavior, and you can also tune this behavior to when you change, for instance, the sharpness of the sampling behavior of the agents, you get kind of sharper structures, but maybe more reduced in space. So there's a trade-off to it, but now you can actually choose the trade-off in sharpness of these structures. So what do the agents do actually? It's rather simple. So every agent has a sensing phase where probabilistically there are 2 directions that are chosen, and in some probabilistically sampled distance, we read the environment, which means we measure the concentration of this chemical attractant emitted by the galaxy data and the agent themselves. And then based on the values that we detected in the environment, we basically sample which direction should be chosen for the agent to move into. And then finally, there is update phase where the agent moves forward in the chosen direction, and we then accumulate some of the spatial statistics to kind of represent the agent's distribution. And so when you put all these 3 steps together, what you get is basically a random walk for every agent. So here is a sample where the agent moves from left to right, following the concentration of the data emitted chemical or attractant, which is rendered in gray. And you can also see that the agent leaves these cyan kind of footprints, which then form the actual geometry of the transport network. So it's not the agents themselves that you see in these renderings or these visualizations. It is the superposition of their trails that we are visualizing and that we are using to represent the cosmic web. So what we're looking at now is a fitting session where we start with a uniform distribution of agents, and eventually this stabilizes in a very nice kind of network structure that actually we measured to be very well aligned with the data. And yeah, this is a very long video, so I could be playing it for a while. But here are some just insights into this structure. We can slice it in 3D space in various ways, and just yeah, look at the structures, and then export them for subsequent like rigorous analysis on the astronomical side of things. Here you see another view where a particular segment of the density of this medium is highlighted, and then slicing through this medium, we get this very nice kind of morphing animation, just showing in green where this particular segment of density lies in space. For whatever reason is this interesting. So the nice thing about this model is that because of this Monte Carlo formulation, this stochasticity is actually very robust. It doesn't get stuck in local optima. It really always finds the same morphology even when you disturb the simulation dramatically. So here we see that we kind of vacuum all the agents to the center of the domain, and then as they are unleashed, they'll start finding all the structures, you know, from the get-go, and then visualizing it as the average density. We see that the structure is kind of biased towards the center, but then when I rewind this a minute later, we actually see that everything kind of equilibrates, and the model restores its original equilibrium or shape. So thanks to this, we have been able to actually really reliably detect the cosmic web structures. So here's a few zoom-ins into this whole structure, where the yellow blobs are galaxies, and the purple lines are the detected cosmic web structures. And we see that wherever we are in this data set, these align with the data extremely well. And we have been also we've been able to localize, as I was talking about, this particular segment of the density of the medium, which is kind of a transition between the near galactic environments and then the places far from the galaxies, which are called the voids. And this is of particular interest to the astronomers for reasons that I don't have time to go to. But needless to say, the model performs reliably here. There is another paper that we wrote more recently, where we detect the cosmic web structures towards a particular strong source of radiation called a flash radio burst, which are very fast pulses of radiation emitted kind of omnidirectionally into the universe. And we've been able to actually find the structure of the cosmic web between us, which will be on the left side here, and the source of this signal, which is on the right, and show that actually this signal interacts with the cosmic web, and that we are able to find and measure this interaction, and that it actually pretty much matches the reality. And of course, I get a bunch of messages now. So we also fit it to simulation data, so kind of large-scale supercomputer simulations, and these are much denser data. So I'm kind of slicing through them here, and again, we find that these structures, the structures reconstructed by the model, agree to a really good degree with these simulations. So that's another piece of evidence for why this is very interesting. So for the future, we are going to investigate this, especially expanding our search to higher distances, which are called redshifts. So basically comprising more and more data. For instance, here you see an experimental fit to 300,000 galaxies up to a distance of 0.1 redshift, which is about 1 billion light years, if I did my math right. So this is a very large data set, and the model is actually able to handle it still pretty well. Another application which we're looking at right now is exploring the structure of high-dimensional spaces. For instance, here is word embeddings. So this is a high-dimensional kind of data set of points, which is reduced to 3 dimensions for these experiments and for the visualization. And you see that we actually find all kinds of really interesting structures in the word embedding dataset as such. And then we're even able to explore the data based on the reconstruction from our model. The model also generates very cool kind of bio-looking structures. You can think about it as scaffoldings or maybe kind of cardiovascular systems. And yeah, I mean, judge for yourself. So the questions that we're asking ourselves is, can we actually make it learn? So now it's just a model that we are fitting by hand. We have some idea about the kind of energy of the fit, but definitely nothing principled. So if you have suggestions about how we could improve this to make it more adaptive to the structures, that would be really appreciated. And also, we are looking for other cool stuff that can be slimed. So what about, traffic simulation? Could we visualize and explore different data sets? And all kinds of problems that might come to your mind. Again, very happy to hear your suggestions and feedback. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and then start sharing again, but without the video optimization. And I'm happy to take your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a beautiful, beautiful presentation.
Thank you.
As I just mentioned in the chat, the lectures have started in the other hall. So anyone who needs to leave, you're welcome to do so, obviously. And with that, we can still stay for a few minutes if the audience has any questions. I'll read a question from Abe for people who can't see the chat. Amazing ideas and images. It seems like your virtual slime molds are tunably stochastic. Is this tunability important, or is it just the presence of stochasticity? If tunability is a prominent feature, is there a similar way to control the stochasticity of the molds, of the wet lab molds?
Oh, okay. That's several questions at once. I'll say I don't know much about. No. That's fine. It's just the response will be a bit messy. So first of all, the wet lab structures, they are. I don't really know that much about it, how to influence it. I don't even know how much this stochastic formulation corresponds to the real organism. This is more like our take on all of this. The other question, the stochasticity is a property of the whole model, and as far as configuring it, that's up to you as the user. So we have identified 2 very useful probability distributions that correspond pretty well to the behavior of the matter in the universe. One of them is for sampling distances of the particles, which is called the Maxwell-Boltzmann distribution. There is some principled reasons why this is applicable. The other one is just to kind of do forward sampling direction, forward sampling decision for the directions of the agents, so that they kind of keep their momentum, so to say. And then there are parameters of these distributions that you can tune in real time and actually, find the sharpness or the acuteness of the structure that you prefer. But that said, you as a user have a way to completely swap these out and fit it to your concrete domain. So there's no limitation in there. What we're presenting is more like the meta model, where you just plug in your probability distributions and the thing just does something, and hopefully it corresponds to your expectations about your domain.
Thank you. Great talk.
Thank you.
And if you could answer quickly, otherwise we can move to the Slack, of course. But Jan had an interesting question in the chat asking if you could comment on how Monte Carlo slime mold is related to general unsupervised learning. Have you looked into learning topological structure as neural gas does?
I have not. I really don't know the answer to this, but I'm happy to talk about it. All I can say is the model doesn't learn right now. It's just a fitting model. So this layer is still in future work.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Oskar, and thank you to all the speakers. This was a beautiful session. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All the others.
Bye, everyone, for now.
See you. Anyone would like to discuss anything right now? Since we still have the room. Are you still on the line, Jan? That's a really interesting direction that I wasn't aware of.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, hello.
Hey. Good to see you again.
Yeah, nice to see you again. Yeah, well, as yesterday, I first had to put on the headphones because otherwise, I mean, I didn't want to repeat performance of the interference or whatever it was. Yeah, well, I mean, I can't really comment too much further beyond what I've written. I mean, I'm just generally reminded of the where the neural gas, where I mean, you're sort of, I mean, you've got like I mean, code vectors floating around among data points, and then we're trying to fit them. So I mean, in that regard, well, I mean, I think learning is maybe to be understood in a relatively general sense. And well, I mean, there is such a thing as unsupervised learning, which is really not, I mean, I'm not certain it's fundamentally different from